They called it early retirement. I called it what it was: theft. I'm 60 years old. My name is Richard Hayes. I spent 35 years building the sales division of TechCore Solutions from $3 million in annual revenue to $140 million. I hired and trained 70% of the current sales team. I personally closed deals with 18 of our 20 largest clients. And the new CEO, Brandon Cole, a 38-year-old Stanford MBA with zero sales experience, told me I needed to accept early retirement because I didn't understand modern technology or contemporary sales methods. What happened next destroyed his company, made me CEO of their biggest competitor, and proved that 35 years of relationships matter more than a fancy degree. If you've ever been forced into retirement when you weren't ready, if you've ever been told you're obsolete when you know you're at your peak, if you've ever watched someone younger with less experience take credit for what you built, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now and subscribe, because what I discovered about Brandon, what I did with the network I'd spent 3 decades building, it proved that loyalty and relationships beat corporate politics every single time. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've experienced forced retirement. I want to know how common this is. The meeting happened on a Tuesday morning. Brandon had been CEO for 6 months, called me into his office. "Richard," he said, sliding papers across his desk, "I've been reviewing departmental performance and age demographics. We need to modernize. The board agrees that it's time for you to consider your retirement options." "I'm 60, I said, not 70. I'm hitting quota." "My team is hitting quota." "What's the problem?" "The problem," Brandon said, "is that our sales methods need to evolve. You still rely on in-person meetings, phone calls, relationship selling. Our competitors use AI-driven prospecting, social selling, automated pipelines. You're from a different era. You don't understand how modern B2B sales works." "I closed $4 million in deals last quarter," I said. "That's different era." Brandon leaned back. "Richard, you've had a great run. 35 years. That's remarkable. But the company is evolving beyond what you can adapt to. We're offering a generous early retirement package, 18-month salary, extended healthcare, consulting retainer if needed. You should take it." "And if I don't?" I asked. "Then we'll have a more difficult conversation," he said, "about performance improvement plans, about whether your approach is holding the team back, about whether this is still the right fit." I understood. This wasn't an offer. It was a threat disguised as generosity. Sign the retirement papers or be forced out with nothing. I took the papers home. Read them carefully. The generous package had problems. 18 months salary, but only if I signed a non-compete agreement preventing me from working in enterprise software sales for 3 years. Extended healthcare, but at a premium I'd have to pay myself. Consulting retainer, but only if Brandon personally approved projects. And the pension calculation was wrong. I'd contributed to company pension for 35 years. Should have been worth $800,000 at my retirement age of 65. But they were calculating it as if I were retiring voluntarily at 60. Reduced it to $470,000. $330,000 stolen through creative accounting. I called the benefits department. "This calculation is wrong," I said. "I'm being forced to retire early." That should trigger the involuntary termination clause, which pays full pension. The benefits manager was apologetic but clear. "Mr. Hayes, your paperwork says voluntary early retirement. That's what determines the calculation." "But I'm being forced," I said. "Then you need to document that," she said. "And good luck. Brandon will deny it. It's your word against his." I consulted an employment attorney. She reviewed everything. "They're constructive discharge," she said, "creating conditions to force you out while making it look voluntary. The non-compete is probably unenforceable. It would cost you $50,000 to fight. The pension reduction is borderline illegal, but hard to prove. You could sue. It'll take 3 years. Cost $100,000. You might win, might not. Or you could sign and move on." I was 60 years old. I didn't have 3 years to fight in court. I needed income, healthcare, a future. But I couldn't let Brandon steal $330,000 and destroy what I'd built. So I made a decision. I'd sign his papers, and then I'd destroy his company. I scheduled a meeting with Brandon. "I'll sign," I said, "but I have conditions. I want the full pension calculation, $800,000, not for $170. And I want a non-compete limited to direct competitors. I can consult in adjacent industries." Brandon smiled. "Richard, the offer is the offer. You're not in a position to negotiate." "I know about the Meridian deal," I said. His smile disappeared. "What about it?" "I know it's not closed," I said. "I know you told the board it was signed, but it's not." Michael John at Meridian told me personally they're still evaluating. If that deal falls through, your board will ask questions about why you claimed it was done. Brandon's face went red. Are you threatening me? I'm negotiating, I said. Fix the pension calculation. Limit the non-compete. Or make sure the board knows Meridian is still in play. And maybe I'll make sure Meridian knows you've been misrepresenting their decision. Brandon was silent for a long moment. Then, fine. Full pension. Non-compete limited to direct competitors only. You'll have revised papers by Friday. I signed the revised agreement, received my 18-month severance, and started planning. Brandon thought he'd neutralized me. He hadn't. He'd just made his biggest mistake. I spent my first month off retirement doing research. TechCore Solutions, the company I'd built the sales division for, was in trouble. Brandon had been hired to modernize and grow, but under his leadership, things were deteriorating. Stock price down 18% in 6 months. 2 major clients hadn't renewed contracts. Sales team turnover up 40%. Brandon was cutting costs and pushing automation, but losing the human relationships that made B2B software sales work. I called former colleagues still at the company. Carefully, off the record. What's happening there? I asked. It's a disaster, one told me. Brandon doesn't understand our clients. He thinks everything can be automated. He's cutting travel budgets, limiting client dinners, eliminating trade show attendance. He says it's all inefficient spending. But our clients want relationships. They want to know we care. Another said, 3 of my best sales reps quit last month. Brandon brought in consultants who redesigned the comp plan. Now it's all focused on volume of demos, not quality of deals. Reps are chasing small accounts because the metrics reward activity over results. A third, he's alienating clients. He cancelled the annual customer summit because it was expensive. But that summit was where we strengthened relationships and upsold services. Clients are asking me why we don't care anymore. I ask each of them, if there were an alternative, a competitor with better culture and real relationship focus, would you consider leaving? Every single one said yes. I made a list of former TechCore employees who'd left in the past 3 years. Found 47 people. Sales, engineering, customer success, marketing. Reached out to 20 who I knew well. Invited them to coffee, one-on-one conversations. Would you ever consider working together again? I asked. In a new company, one that values what we built at TechCore before Brandon destroyed it. 18 said yes immediately. 2 others said maybe if the opportunity was right. I had a team ready. Now I needed funding, a product, and a plan. I called 3 clients I'd worked with for over a decade. All had left TechCore in the past year. Why did you leave? I asked. We loved working with you, Richard, one said. But after you left, everything changed. New rep was pushy, didn't understand our business, just wanted to check boxes and close deals. We felt like a number, not a partnership. Another said, Brandon cancelled our quarterly business reviews, said they were inefficient. But those meetings were how we planned strategy together. Without them, we're just paying for software with no guidance. Would you come back if there were a better option? I asked. If it was you, Richard. Absolutely. Within 2 months of my forced retirement, I had 18 former employees ready to join a new company and 15 clients ready to switch if I could offer them an alternative. Now I needed to build it. I partnered with 2 former TechCore engineers who'd left a year earlier. They'd been working on a competing product in their spare time. Better architecture, more flexible, cloud native. Everything TechCore's legacy software wasn't. You want to turn this into a real company? I asked. Yes, they said, but we need sales and funding. I can bring sales, I said, and I know where to get funding. I contacted 3 investors I'd met over 35 years of client relationships, former clients who become venture capitalists. I pitched them the opportunity. TechCore is failing under bad leadership. 47 employees have left in 3 years, most of them top performers. 15 major clients are unhappy and open to switching. I have a team ready, a better product, and relationships they can't replicate. All I need is capital to build it. How much? One asked. $2 million to start. Build the platform, hire the core team, get first 5 clients. Then $5 million Series A after we prove traction. Within 3 weeks, I had $2.3 million in seed funding. I incorporated the company as RelationCore Solutions. Deliberate name. Everything TechCore had abandoned under Brandon. We hired 12 people in the first month, all former TechCore employees, all people who understood relationship-driven B2B sales. We built the product in for months, not as feature-rich as TechCore yet, but better architecture, easier to use, more flexible, and backed by a team that actually cared about customer success. Then I started making calls to the 15 clients who'd said they'd consider switching. I didn't badmouth TechCore. Didn't have to. I just showed them what we built. A better product, a team they already trusted, a company that valued relationships over automation. 10 of the 15 signed contracts in the first 3 months. 5 more said they'd evaluate after their TechCore contracts expired. That was $3 million in annual recurring revenue from a standing start. 6 months after being forced into retirement, TechCore's sales were $90 million annually. I'd taken $3 million of it, 3.3%. Not huge, but it was just beginning. Because I wasn't done recruiting, former TechCore employees kept reaching out. I heard you started RelationCore. Are you hiring? I heard you're building something. Can I join? By month 6, we'd hired 28 people, 22 of them from TechCore. Each one brought knowledge, relationships, clients. By month 9, we had 23 clients, 15 from TechCore. 8 new ones who chose us over TechCore. $8 million in annual revenue, just under 9% of TechCore's business. And TechCore was starting to notice. Brandon called me. Richard, he said, I hear you started a competing company. Congratulations. I appreciate the sentiment, I said, but I'm curious. Why are you calling? I want to be clear about the non-compete you signed, he said. You agreed not to work for direct competitors. I'm not working for a competitor, I said. I'm running my own company, different legal entity, and if you read the revised agreement you signed, it specifically says I can consult in adjacent industries. We're not TechCore. We're building something different. That's a creative interpretation, Brandon said. You're stealing our people and clients. I'm hiring talented people who left voluntarily, I said, and I'm serving clients who chose to work with us. If TechCore can't retain employees or clients, that's not my problem. It's yours. We'll see what our lawyers think, he said. Please do, I said. And while you're at it, ask them about constructive discharge, about forcing employees into early retirement, about pension calculations that violate ERISA. I've kept excellent records. Brandon hung up. 2 weeks later, I received a cease and desist letter from TechCore's attorneys, threatening to sue for violation of non-compete, theft of trade secrets, and tortious interference. My attorney laughed when she read it. They have no case, she said. The revised non-compete you negotiated protects you. You haven't stolen any trade secrets, and clients chose to leave voluntarily. This is intimidation. Ignore it or respond telling them to pound sand. I chose option 2. While TechCore's lawyers sent threats, I kept building. We hit year 1 with 30 for clients and $12 million in revenue, 13% of TechCore's market share. But more importantly, we were profitable. Small team, low overhead, high customer satisfaction. TechCore, meanwhile, was hemorrhaging. Their annual report came out, revenue down 11% year-over-year, stock down 32% from when Brandon took over, employee turnover at 47%. Brandon blamed market conditions, increased competition, economic uncertainty. He didn't mention that the increased competition was mostly us, or that the employee turnover was people leaving to join us, or that the clients they'd lost were because he destroyed relationships I'd spent decades building. I kept recruiting. We hired 43 people in year 1, 31 from TechCore. Each won new clients, had relationships, brought expertise. By year 2, we had 68 clients and $28 million in revenue, 31% of TechCore's market. They'd shrunk from $90 million to $82 million. We'd grown from 0 to $28 million. The math was obvious. We were eating them alive. TechCore's board finally noticed. They fired Brandon. 18 months after forcing me into retirement, he was gone. Severance package. No admission of failure. Just pursuing other opportunities. The board brought in a turnaround consultant. She called me. Richard, this is Amanda Foster. I've been retained by TechCore's board to evaluate strategic options. I'd like to talk with you. About what? I asked. About why 31 former employees left to join your company. About why you're taking their clients. About what went wrong. I can tell you what went wrong, I said. You hired a CEO who didn't understand the business, who thought automation could replace relationships, who forced out experienced people and replaced them with cheap, inexperienced ones, who alienated clients by cutting the very services that made them loyal. That's what went wrong. Can we fix it? She asked. Not with me, I said. I have my own company now, but I appreciate the call. 6 months later, TechCore announced a restructuring, layoffs of 30% of staff, office closures, product line consolidation. Revenue was down to $68 million, 24% decline in 2 years. We were at $42 million. RelationCore had 62% of the market share TechCore had lost. Year 3 was the turning point. TechCore's largest client, Meridian, the one Brandon had lied about closing, came up for renewal. Their contract was worth $8 million annually. TechCore sent their new sales team to pitch renewal. Slick presentation, promises of new features, discounted pricing. But Meridian called me. Richard, we've worked with you before. We trust you. What can RelationCore offer? I flew to Chicago, met with their CTO and CFO. Didn't present slides, just talked. You know our product is better, I said. More flexible, easier to integrate, but that's not why you should switch. You should switch because we'll treat you like a partner, not a number. Quarterly business reviews with me personally. Dedicated customer success manager. Direct line to our engineering team. When you have a problem, you'll get a person, not a ticket system. That's worth more than any feature or discount. They signed an 8-year contract. $8 million annually. $64 million in total contract value. The single largest deal in RelationCore's history. And it came from TechCore's biggest client. That deal broke them. TechCore's stock crashed, down 58% from Brandon's first day. The board announced they were exploring strategic alternatives. Code 4. We're selling the company because we're failing. 3 months after Meridian switched, I received a call from TechCore's board chairman. Richard, this is Gerald Hartman. I'm sure you remember me. I do, I said. You were on the board when Brandon forced me into retirement. Yes, Gerald said, and I want to apologize for that. We made a mistake. Brandon wasn't the right leader. We should have recognized that sooner. We should have protected people like you instead of enabling his agenda. I appreciate that, I said. But apologies don't undo 3 years of damage. I know, he said. That's why I'm calling. TechCore is being sold. We have 2 offers on the table. One from a private equity firm that will asset strip and liquidate. One from a strategic acquirer that will integrate us into their portfolio and eliminate the brand. Neither is good for employees or clients. But there's a third option. We sell to you. You'd be interested in selling to me? I asked. You are our logical acquirer, Gerald said. You've taken 38% of our business already. You have the team, the clients, and the momentum. If you buy us, you get the rest of our client base, our IP, our remaining employees, and you eliminate your only real competitor. What's the price? I asked. $42 million, he said. For a company that was worth $200 million when you left 3 years ago. I asked. For a company that's now worth $42 million because of mismanagement. That's the number, Gerald said. Plus assumption of $23 million in debt. So $65 million total. I'll think about it, I said. I had $42 million in revenue. Profitable. Growing. Investors who'd back an acquisition. But did I want TechCore? Even at a discount? I consulted my investors. They loved it. Buy them, one said. You get their remaining clients, their patent, their brand, their office leases you can consolidate. This eliminates competition and doubles your revenue overnight. It's a steal at $65 million. We'll fund it. I consulted my leadership team. Do it, they said. We've been beating them in the market, but this ends the fight. We become the dominant player, and we can save the good employees who are still there. I made an offer. $58 million total. $35 million cash plus $23 million debt assumption. Contingent on retaining key employees and clients. And one additional condition. What condition? Gerald asked. I become CEO of the combined company, I said, and Brandon Cole is prohibited from any involvement, employment, or board position in perpetuity. Done, Gerald said. The deal closed 4 months later. At age 63, 3 years after being forced into early retirement, I became CEO of TechCore Solutions. The company I'd built the sales division for over 35 years. The company that had tried to discard me at 60. I was back as the owner and CEO. Brandon Cole, the 38-year-old who'd forced me out, was unemployed. His LinkedIn showed he was exploring opportunities. The board members who'd enabled him were gone. And I had control of a company with $93 million in annual revenue, 220 employees, and the market position we'd spent 3 years fighting for. First day as CEO, I called an all-hands meeting. For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Hayes, I said. I started in sales here 38 years ago. I built the division that became our core revenue engine. 3 years ago, I was forced into early retirement by leadership that didn't value experience, relationships, or the culture we built. I started a competitor. We took 38% of TechCore's business, not through tricks or undercutting, through relationships and service, by valuing people over automation, by treating clients like partners. Today, I'm back as your CEO, and we're going to rebuild what was destroyed. We're going to value experience. We're going to invest in relationships. We're going to prove that there's no technology that replaces trust, no automation that replaces care, and no amount of MBA theory that beats 3 decades of actually doing the work. If you stayed here during the Brandon years, thank you for your loyalty. If you left and want to come back, you're welcome. If you are new, welcome to a company that's going to value what you contribute, not just your age or pedigree. The room stood and applauded. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask you something. Are you still with me? Does this story resonate? If you've been forced into early retirement, told you're obsolete, or pushed aside for someone younger and less experienced, hit that like button right now. It helps others facing the same situation find this story. Subscribe to this channel for weekly stories of people over 50 who refuse to accept that age means irrelevance. And drop a comment telling me your experience. Have you been forced to retire early? Have you fought back? I want to hear from you. Now, back to rebuilding TechCore. My first 90 days as CEO were focused on 3 things: culture, clients, and costs. Culture meant reversing everything Brandon had done. I reinstated the annual customer summit, increased travel budgets, brought back quarterly business reviews, eliminated the metrics-driven comp plan that rewarded activity over results, restored trust-based management. I promoted 3 people Brandon had sidelined because they were too old. All 3 were in their 50s. All 3 had deep client relationships. All 3 became VPs reporting directly to me. I called every major client personally. 23 calls into weeks. Introduced myself, explained the transition, asked what they needed. 8 of them said, "We've been waiting for leadership change. We almost left, but now we'll stay." 3 had already signed contracts with competitors. I flew to meet them in person, explained that TechCore under my leadership would be different, would be what it used to be. 2 of them cancelled the competitor contracts and renewed with us. 1 said, "Give us 6 months to evaluate. If you deliver, we'll come back." I met with every employee in groups of 10, asked what they needed to succeed, what Brandon had broken, what they wanted restored. They told me, and I listened. Within 90 days, employee satisfaction scores went from 32% to 68%. Client retention went from 71% to 89%. Revenue, which had been declining, stabilized. By month 6, it was growing again. But I wanted to do more than just stabilize. I wanted to make a statement. Brandon had destroyed value through arrogance and ignorance. I was going to prove that experience, relationships, and treating people with respect built sustainable success. We launched 3 initiatives. First, I created the Experience Leadership Program, targeted at employees over 50. Leadership training, mentorship, board presentation skills, explicitly designed to combat the ageism Brandon had introduced. 23 people enrolled in the first cohort. All of them had been marginalized under Brandon. All of them became department leaders within 18 months. Second, I created the Relationship Revenue Program, a fund that paid for client dinners, entertainment, gifts, and relationship building activities. Brandon had eliminated all of that as wasteful spending. I restored it with a vengeance. 5 million annually dedicated to client relationships. Sales reps could expense anything that built relationships without approval up to $5,000 per client annually. Within a year, client satisfaction went from 62% to 91%, and upsells increased by 43% because clients trusted us again. Third, I launched the Legacy Partnership Program, identifying clients we'd worked with for over 10 years and giving them guaranteed pricing, exclusive features, and executive access. 27 clients qualified. All of them had stayed loyal through Brandon's chaos. We wanted to reward that. The program generated 8 million in renewals in year 1. More importantly, it sent a message. Loyalty matters. Experience matters. Long-term relationships matter. By year 2 under my leadership, TechCore was thriving again. Revenue up to 112 million. Stock price recovered to 40% above Brandon's first day. Profit margin at 23%, highest in company history. And employee turnover down to 11%, lowest in the industry. But the most satisfying moment came from an unexpected source. Brandon Cole's LinkedIn. I don't usually check former colleagues on LinkedIn, but someone sent me a screenshot. Brandon had updated his profile. Under experience, it now read, TechCore Solutions, CEO, 18 months, led digital transformation initiative, modernized sales operations, streamlined organizational structure. No mention that revenue declined 24%. No mention that he was fired. No mention that the company nearly collapsed under his leadership. But what caught my attention was his current position. Exploring board and advisory opportunities. Translation. unemployed for 2 years. I showed it to my CFO. Should we be concerned he might get hired somewhere else and try this again? She asked. Let him try, I said. His resume shows 18 months as CEO of a company that almost failed. Any board doing due diligence will discover what actually happened. He's radioactive, but I wanted to make sure. So I did something petty but satisfying. I wrote a detailed case study, posted it on LinkedIn and Medium, titled, How Bad Leadership Almost Destroyed a $200 Million Company, a case study in valuing experience. I didn't name Brandon. Didn't have to. Anyone in our industry knew which company I was talking about. The post detailed every mistake, forcing out experienced employees, cutting relationship building budgets, prioritizing automation over human connection, lying to the board about deal status, alienating clients through arrogance. The post went viral, 73,000 views in a week, 230 comments, most from people sharing similar stories of CEOs who'd valued youth over experience and destroyed value. Several from former TechCore employees adding details I didn't know, and one from Brennan himself. This is a vindictive attack from someone who couldn't adapt to modern business, he wrote. Age discrimination works both ways. Older executives who can't evolve need to make room for new thinking. The response ratio was 30-1 against him. People demolished his comment, pointed out that new thinking had nearly bankrupted the company, that old thinking had rebuilt it, that his comment proved exactly why he'd failed. He deleted the comment within hours, but screenshots live forever. Brandon's name became synonymous with geist mismanagement in our industry. He never got another CEO position, never joined another board. Last I heard, he was doing fractional CFO work for startups. A steep fall from forcing me into retirement 3 years earlier. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding an empire. At 65, I'd acquired 2 competitors, grown TechCore to $143 million in revenue, hired over 90 people, 47 of them over age 50, created the most age-diverse leadership team in the software industry, and proved that experience wasn't obsolescence. It was competitive advantage. I started speaking at conferences, not about sales tactics, about ageism in corporate America, how forced retirement destroys organizational knowledge, how youth obsession leads to bad decisions, how the executives being pushed out at 55 to 65 are often the most valuable. One talk at a national HR conference got particular attention. The $200 million cost of age discrimination. How one company almost failed. I told the TechCore story, showed the revenue charts, the employee turnover, the client affections, then showed the recovery after bringing back experienced leadership. The cost of Brandon's ageism, $87 million in lost revenue, 93 employees quit, 31 clients left, stock price down 58%. The value of experience-based leadership, revenue recovered and growing, best employee retention in industry, highest client satisfaction ever, stock price at all-time high. One HR executive approached me after. We just hired a 35-year-old CEO, she said. He's talking about refreshing our leadership team, which means forcing out everyone over 55. I'm sending him this presentation. I gave her permission to share it widely. That presentation has been downloaded over 12,000 times, used in 8 MBA programs as a case study, cited in 4 age discrimination lawsuits, became a blueprint for what not to do. At 67, I was named CEO of the Year by Enterprise Software magazine, not just for revenue growth, but for revolutionizing how the industry thinks about age, experience, and leadership. The award ceremony was attended by 400 industry executives. My acceptance speech was short. 3 years ago, I was forced into early retirement at 60, told I didn't understand modern technology, told I was from a different era, told my sales methods were outdated. The CEO who forced me out was 38, Stanford MBA, consultancy background, all the credentials that look impressive on paper, and he nearly destroyed a $200 million company in 18 months. Why? Because he confused youth with innovation, credentials with competence, theory with experience. I started a competitor with $2 million in funding and a team of obsolete employees, people in their 50s and 60s who'd been pushed out. Within 3 years, we'd taken 38% of that company's business. Then I bought the company that had discarded me and rebuilt it using the very methods I'd been told were obsolete. Relationships, trust, valuing people, treating clients like partners, respecting experience. Today, that company is thriving. Revenue at $143 million, growing 28% annually. Employee satisfaction at 91%. client retention at 94%, and our leadership team has an average age of 56. We don't hire based on age. We hire based on competence, but we explicitly value experience. Because experience is pattern recognition. It's having seen the same problem 3 different times and knowing which solution actually works. It's relationships built over decades that can't be replicated by LinkedIn automation. It's wisdom that comes from making mistakes and learning from them. I'm 67 years old. I was told I was obsolete at 60. I proved I'm more valuable now than I was at 30 because I've learned what matters. This award belongs to every executive over 50 who's been forced out. Every salesperson told they're too old. Every leader pushed aside for someone younger and less experienced. You are not obsolete. The people who think you are wrong. And if you fight back, you'll prove it. The standing ovation lasted for minutes. After the ceremony, 17 executives approached me, all over 55, all recently forced into retirement or facing pressure. Do you hire? They asked. Or do you advise? Or can you help us fight? I started a consulting practice, part-time, focused on executives facing forced retirement. I'd help them document discrimination, connect with employment attorneys, and if they wanted to fight back by starting competitors, I'd help with that too. Over the next 3 years, I consulted for 23 executives, 14 sued their former employers, 11 won settlements averaging $340,000 each, 9 started competing companies. 6 of those became successful enough to acquire or seriously damage their former employers. I created a playbook, literally, the Forced Retirement Response Framework. How to turn age discrimination into competitive advantage, 47 pages. Step-by-step guide on documenting discrimination, preserving evidence, negotiating departure, using non-competes correctly, building competitive businesses, and rebuilding what was stolen. I gave it away free. Downloaded over 8,000 times. Used in 32 age discrimination lawsuits. Became the blueprint for fighting back. At 70, I started transitioning out of daily CEO operations. Not because I was too old, but because I'd built what I wanted to build. TechCore was stable, growing, profitable, led by a team I trusted. I promoted my CEO, Catherine Wu, to CEO. She was 53, former sales VP, 26 years of experience, everything Brandon wasn't. I became executive chairman, still involved in strategy and major decisions, but not running day-to-day operations. This freed me to focus on the work I'd become passionate about, fighting age discrimination in corporate America. I wrote a book, Forced Out: How Age Discrimination Destroys Companies and How to Fight Back. It wasn't a bestseller, but it found its audience. Sold 42,000 copies in hardcover, another 60,000 digital, used in 38 MBA programs, assigned reading in 12 leadership development programs. One reviewer called it the most important book on age discrimination since Frieden wrote The Fountain of Age. I wasn't sure about that comparison, but I knew the book mattered because I received emails, hundreds of them, from executives who'd been forced out and used the book to fight back, from HR leaders who'd used it to change their company's policies, from attorneys who'd used it in discrimination cases. One email stood out, from a 62-year-old CFO who'd been forced to retire. She'd started a consulting firm using my playbook. Within 2 years, she'd recruited 8 other retired CFOs. They were now doing fractional CFO work for mid-sized companies, charging premium rates, competing directly with the big consulting firms. Her firm had $12 million in revenue. She wrote, "You showed me that being forced out wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Thank you for turning my anger into a business plan. That was the goal. Not revenge, though revenge was satisfying, but transformation, showing people that forced retirement could be the best thing that happened to them if they refused to accept it as the end." At 72, I was invited to testify before Congress. The Committee on Aging was investigating age discrimination in employment. They wanted examples of how it manifested and what could be. I testified for 90 minutes, told my story, showed the data on how TechCore had nearly failed under a guy's leadership and thrived under experience-based leadership, presented evidence from 23 other cases I'd consulted on, showed that age discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was economically destructive. The committee asked, what policy changes would help? 3 things, I said. First, strengthen the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. Right now, it's too easy for companies to force people out through voluntary early retirement programs that are actually coerced. Make it clear that any retirement before 65 that comes with threats of performance plans or termination is presumed discriminatory. Second, require companies to report age diversity in leadership. We mandate diversity reporting for gender and race. Add age. Make companies disclose what percentage of executives are over 50. Shine light on the problem. Third, eliminate mandatory retirement ages except where absolutely necessary for safety. If someone at 70 can do the job, age alone shouldn't disqualify them. 6 months later, Congress passed the Age Discrimination Prevention and Reporting Act. It incorporated all 3 recommendations. Companies now had to report age diversity. Forced retirements before 65 faced higher scrutiny. Mandatory retirement ages were limited to specific safety-critical roles. The bill was nicknamed Hayes Law by advocates. I didn't ask for that, but I accepted it because it meant my forced retirement at 60 had changed the law for millions of people. At 75, I officially retired. For real this time. Not forced, not coerced. My choice. I've rebuilt TechCore. Fought age discrimination, changed laws, written a book, helped dozens of executives fight back. It was time. My retirement party was attended by 300 people, employees, clients, investors, executives I'd helped, and one surprise guest, Brandon Cole. He walked in during the reception. I was shocked. So was everyone else. Security moved toward him. I waved them off. Brandon approached me. Richard, he said. I know I'm not welcome, but I needed to say something. I'm listening, I said. You were right, he said. About everything. I was arrogant. I thought my degree and my consulting experience meant I knew better than people who'd actually done the work. I destroyed a great company because I couldn't see past my own ego. I forced you out because you made me feel inadequate, because you knew things I didn't, and instead of learning from you, I wanted you gone. I've spent 7 years failing at every job since, because I kept making the same mistakes, valuing theory over experience. Credentials over competent, youth over wisdom. I'm 55 now, and I'm starting to experience what I inflicted on you. People telling me I'm from a different era, that I don't understand modern business, that I should make room for younger leaders. It's devastating, and I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did to you was wrong. What I did to TechCore was destructive. And what you built afterward is remarkable. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to apologize. I looked at Brandon, older now, grayer, humbled by failure, and I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, but pity. You're right, I said. What you did was wrong. You cost me 3 years. You stole $330,000 from my pension. You tried to destroy what I'd built, but you gave me something too. You gave me clarity. You proved everything I believed about leadership, relationships, and experience. You showed me who I was when everything was taken away, and you made it possible for me to help dozens of other people fight back. So I don't forgive you for what you did, but I thank you for proving I was right. Brandon nodded, then left. I never saw him again. But I heard he started a consulting practice helping companies avoid the mistakes he'd made. Teaching young CEOs to value experience. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. At 77, I received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Age Discrimination in Employment Coalition for changing how America thinks about age in the workplace, for helping over 200 executives fight back, for transforming my forced retirement into a movement. The award ceremony featured testimonials from executives I'd helped, from employees at TechCore who'd benefited from experience-based leadership, from clients who'd watched the company nearly die under Brandon and thrive under me. One testimonial was from Catherine Wu, my successor as CEO. Richard taught me something crucial, she said. Age discrimination isn't just about fairness. It's about business outcomes. Companies that value experience outperform companies that worship youth. We have the data. TechCore's revenue grew 48% under Richard's leadership compared to declining 24% under Brandon. Employee satisfaction went from 32% to 91%. Client retention from 71% to 94%. This isn't just about being nice to older workers. It's about smart business. And Richard proved it. At 80, I'm still involved in the fight against age discrimination. Not as a CEO, not even as a consultant, but as an advocate. I speak at conferences. I write articles. I support executives facing forced retirement. I fund research on age discrimination's economic impact. One study I commissioned found that age discrimination costs the US economy $850 billion annually. Lost productivity, lost innovation, lost institutional knowledge. Companies force out experienced leaders. Those leaders either retire early, taking knowledge with them, or they start competitive, taking clients and employees. Either way, companies lose. The study was cited in 12 federal age discrimination cases, used by EOC in enforcement actions, became the economic foundation for arguing that age discrimination isn't just wrong morally, it's economically catastrophic. I also started a fund, the Hayes Forced Retirement Legal Defense Fund, $5 million, available to executives facing forced retirement who can't afford to fight. The fund pays for attorneys, expert witnesses, and litigation costs. In 5 years, it's helped 68 executives, 41 cases or settlements. Average recovery, $412,000. Total recovered, $16.9 million. But more importantly, 12 of those executives started competing companies. 8 became successful enough to damage or acquire their former employers. The cycle I'd started was replicating. At 82, I'm slowing down. Health issues. Energy isn't what it was. But TechCore continues to thrive. Revenue, $238 million. Employees, 412. Leadership team average age, 54. Stock price, 380% higher than when Brandon started. I still own 23% of the company, worth approximately $54 million. Not bad for someone who was forced to retire with nothing at 60. The other 77% is owned by employees, investors, and public shareholders, everyone who helped build it, including 47 employees over age 60. Catherine Wu, now 64, is still CEO. She's grooming her successor, a 56-year-old VP of engineering. We don't have a mandatory retirement age. Never will. People work as long as they're effective. Age is irrelevant. One day, I received a letter from Brandon Cole's widow. He died. Heart attack at 63. The letter said he'd left me something in his will. I was suspicious, but curious. His attorney sent a package. Inside was a framed photo. Brandon and me at a sales conference 25 years earlier, before he became CEO, when he was a junior sales rep. On the back, he'd written, "To Richard, who taught me how to close deals when I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sorry I forgot." Be in and a sealed envelope. I opened it. The letter inside was dated 2 months before his death. "Richard, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I wanted you to have that photo because it reminds me of who I was before I became who I became. You trained me when I started at TechCore 26 years ago. You were patient. You taught me the business. You believed I could succeed. And when I became CEO, I repaid you by forcing you into retirement and nearly destroying everything you built. I've thought about that every day for the past 22 years. I've watched you rebuild TechCore into something better than it ever was. I've watched you help hundreds of people fight age discrimination. I've watched you change laws and transform an industry. And I've realized something. My greatest accomplishment wasn't becoming CEO at 38. It was being trained by you at 25. My greatest failure wasn't nearly bankrupting TechCore. It was betraying the person who'd invested in me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that everything you accomplished after I forced you out proved what I should have learned from you in the first place. Experience matters. Relationships matter. Treating people with respect matters. You were right about all of it. Thank you for teaching me. I'm sorry I learned too late. Brandon." I read the letter 3 times. Felt complicated. Anger at what he'd done. Sadness that he'd lived with regret. Satisfaction that he'd admitted I was right. But mostly gratitude. Because his betrayal had given me purpose. His cruelty had created clarity. His mistake had become my mission. I framed the letter next to the photo. Not as forgiveness, but as a reminder that even the people who hurt us can teach us. That every ending can be a beginning. That being forced out at 60 was the best thing that ever happened to me. At 85, I gave my last public speech. At a conference on aging and employment. 2,000 attendees. The title of my talk, "From Forced Retirement to CEO, What 25 Years of Fighting Age Discrimination Taught Me." I walked to the stage slowly, used a cane now, took a moment to catch my breath, then I began. 25 years ago, I was 60 years old. A 38-year-old CEO told me I was obsolete, that I didn't understand modern business, that I needed to retire. I was angry, devastated, certain my career was over. I was wrong. That forced retirement became the catalyst for the most productive 25 years of my life. I started a competitor that took 38% of my former company's business. I bought that company and rebuilt it. I helped over 200 executives fight age discrimination. I changed federal law. I wrote a book. I proved that 60 isn't the end. It's often the beginning. But more importantly, I learned something about age, experience, and value. Age discrimination exists because we conflate age with decline. We assume that older means slower, outdated, less capable. But that's not what age means. Age means experience, pattern recognition, wisdom gained from mistakes, relationships built over decades, perspective that comes from having seen cycles repeat. I'm not smarter at 85 than I was at 60, but I'm wiser. I've seen more. I've failed more. I've learned more. And that makes me more valuable, not less. The CEO who forced me out at 60 failed because he didn't understand this. He thought innovation came from youth, but innovation comes from creativity plus experience. He thought efficiency came from automation, but efficiency comes from knowing which processes matter and which don't. He thought success came from credentials and theory, but success comes from relationships, trust, and actually doing the work. I didn't destroy his company out of revenge, though revenge was satisfying. I destroyed it because I understood what he didn't. That business is about people, that clients value relationships over automation, that employees value respect over perks, that experience is competitive advantage. If you're facing forced retirement, hear this, you're not obsolete, you're experienced. And if you're willing to fight, you can prove it. Document everything, negotiate from strength, use your network, and if necessary, build something new that shows everyone what they lost when they pushed you out. I'm 85 years old. I was forced to retire at 60. Best thing that ever happened to me, because it proved I was never the problem. They were. The standing ovation lasted 6 minutes. After the speech, 38 people approached me, all facing forced retirement, all asking for advice. I gave them my email, told them to contact me, told them I'd help however I could. I'm 85. I don't have decades left, but I have time to help a few more people fight. At 86, I'm still receiving emails, still connecting people with attorneys, still sharing the playbook, still proving that the fight doesn't end just because you're old. One recent email, I'm 64, being forced to retire next month. I found your speech online. It gave me courage to fight. I hired an attorney, filed EUC complaint. Company settled for $470,000. I'm starting a consulting firm with 3 other retired executives. Thank you for showing us this was possible. That's the legacy. Not TechCore, not the laws, not the book, but the people who fought back because I showed them it was possible. Thank you for watching Richard's story. If it resonated with you, if it made you angry about forced retirement, if it inspired you to believe that fighting back is possible at any age, I need you to do something right now. First, smash that like button. It tells YouTube that stories like this matter. Stories of people who were discarded and refused to stay down. Stories that prove age isn't weakness. It helps this reach executives facing forced retirement right now. People who feel their careers are over. People who need to know they can fight back and win. Second, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Every week, we share stories of people over 50 who were pushed aside and proved everyone wrong. Stories of revenge, justice, and second acts. Stories that prove your best years don't have to be behind you. Third, share this video. Send it to anyone over 50, anyone facing retirement pressure, anyone told they're obsolete. Post it in professional networks. Help spread the message that forced retirement can be fought and age discrimination has consequences. And finally, tell me your story in the comments below. Have you been forced to retire early? Told you're too old? Pushed aside for someone younger? Have you fought back, or are you considering it? I want to hear from you. This community is built on shared experiences and the belief that experience is valuable, not obsolete. Because every one of us has power. Every single one of us matters, regardless of age. Your experience is competitive advantage. Your relationships are assets. Your wisdom is irreplaceable. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Remember Richard's story. He was 60 years old when a 38-year-old CEO forced him into retirement, told him he was obsolete, stole his pension, tried to discard him, but Richard documented everything. He negotiated better terms. He started a competitor with former employees. He took 38% of his former company's business in 3 years. Then he bought the company that discarded him. He became CEO at 63. He rebuilt it to record revenue and profitability. He helped over 200 other executives fight back. He changed federal law protecting millions from age discrimination. He proved that 60 isn't the end. It's often the most powerful beginning. If Richard could fight back at 60, while devastated and alone, you can too. Whatever you're facing, whatever your age, whatever they told you about being obsolete. You have power. Document discrimination. Preserve evidence. Use your network. Build something new. Fight back. Win. Richard Hayes was forced to retire at 60. He died at 87. Those 27 years proved that his greatest accomplishments came after someone tried to end his career. Your story can be the same. Age is experience. Experience is wisdom. Wisdom is power. Use it. See you in the next story. Getting forced out isn't failure. Staying down is. Get up. Fight back. Win.